Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another recording stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, August 19th. I think I probably missed the daily login bonus, which seemed to kind of happen no matter what. And I think I probably missed a day's worth of solo missions, and we've just kind of hit that point. Or at least I've hit that point where I actually worked hard to play other games, and in the effort to work hard to play other games, then I have run away from playing this game for relatively quite a long amount of time, every single day. This is weird the way this works. In the sense that you get a new daily quest every day, and then you get another daily quest every day, and then you get another daily quest every day. You could potentially stagger it and play once a day for just one daily quest, but that doesn't really make any sense either. All the other collectible card games have given you a solid single daily quest holding 3 of them, where this gives you 3 daily quests that can be recycled 3 times a day, so the players that play every single day are potentially going to get 3 times as much of the small amount of rewards compared to someone who just wants to play every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then do pre-recorded footage elsewise. So, what else do we even have to do today? Like, on this Wednesday, there's kind of nothing to be done, so let's hop into the shop. Let's open a pack. Just start off with opening a pack so that we can catch up with having all of these packs opened. We only have one more ticket, and it seems like we won't consistently get tickets every single day, although we could be using the equivalent in gold every single day. And so yeah, this might be new, like the second copy of that, and this might be new, but fairly certain we had 3 copies of that. Fairly certain we had 3 copies of that. I maybe didn't have 3 copies of that. Maybe didn't have 3 copies of that either. Fairly certain I had 3 copies of that though, and fairly certain I had 3 copies of that. So let's just do a little liquefy so we can see where we are with the vials. Ooh, 1 gold extra is worth 250 vials. Wow, that is quite a lot. And we've crossed over a certain level of luckiness that we would get a extra gold. Or it just means that regardless of how you play, you have so many cards it doesn't even matter. So we bought some new characters, so let's try Runecraft with this new character and play a little unlimited, and then let's just go through the news, and let's just not do anything to try and stretch out the length of this stream, because there's kind of no reason for it. Like, I could say what has become a slogan now of there isn't that much news, but then I inherently say that. Who is this character? Man, I feel like there's a lot of Japanese only crossovers in this game. I'm not sure if that really is the case, or if this is just, there's been a lot of crossovers that simply I've missed. And I guess that's fine. Well, I'll take a free victory.
I'm very sorry.
And that was a win streak. So yeah, let's just cover the news and call it a day. For the accountability section, let's see. I'm not sure what I talked about, what I played or what I didn't. I played a game called Disoriented, and that sucked, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Then I played a walking simulator called Home is Where One Starts, which that at a very cheap price was alright, but kind of just a single act that probably should have had 2 or 3 acts, even if they were just all going to be walking simulators. Honestly, they put a decent amount of gameplay mechanics. I don't know that character either.
My blossoms will reflect in your eyes.
One of the things, for as much as I might occasionally mention an old anime, I'm actually very much out of the loop as far as anything outside of the mid-90s as far as anime goes. So season to season, with at least 4 seasons happening every year, there's plenty of shows that I hear nothing about. And even if something is super popular, there is a level of forgetfulness amongst the Japanese fans who move every season to the next big thing, and they're very much fad chasers, anime fans in Japan. So this could be from basically any show. Plus, since it's a crossover, there's also that high possibility that it's actually not even a popular show. It was just something that was being promoted. But yeah, I guess after playing Home is Where One Starts, I played Beyond Eyes, which was a game where you're playing as an extremely slow walking blind girl that frankly misunderstands the concept of being blind, and this blind girl walks around risking her life looking for a cat that's been missing a season. Surprise, surprise, when it turns out that the cat had died. I mean, like, it tried to be kind of a slice of life regret thing. They really failed to show a lot of like good times with the cat, so it really just looks like a idiot blind person without a walking cane, and that's not how you want to feel. Like, that is just not how you want to feel about a blind character, is that they're just an idiot, and that's what I got left feeling. I do this and do this.
The void will be there for me.
And this will spell boost. And then, do we have any reason to evolve anything here?
Time to dance.
I mean, I could evolve that character, but I don't see a reason to. What's funny is I looked in the discussions of Beyond Eyes, and they said, well, in areas where you've already revealed the scenery, because when you walk near scenery as this blind girl, it reveals the world and fills it in with color instead of being one big white void. They were going to at some point patch it so she walked faster. So if they did actually put in that patch, she still walks way too slow. But I imagine what they did is they never actually got around to doing that. And yeah, there was just kind of no game there. There was a lot more items to find and memories to find in Home is Where One Starts, and Home is Where One Starts also benefited greatly from being a short, like 1 to 2 hour experience at most, whereas Beyond Eyes was like 3 or 4 hours. And yeah, a lot like comic books, when you have like blind characters, often in comic books they turn into superheroes, and even though the character you were playing as felt like she was agoraphobic as much as she was blind, because she was afraid of simplistic things like dogs and crows as sounds, and getting startled by lawnmowers, or thinking a sound was a car and then it turned out to be a lawnmower. It's like, this kid isn't that young looking. It looks like it's a 11 or 12-year-old. And so you kind of get put in different directions where you A, know she shouldn't be left alone, but B, also are in awe of her just inability to live with, to cope with simplistic things. Alright. What can we do to do more damage?
A revelation.
So yeah, really hated Beyond Eyes. It really went nowhere. I don't know how you even ended up with a game like that. It had a lot of artsy things, a really nice art, like oil painting art style to it, but that's about all you could say for it. And even the environments and things that did look pretty started getting fairly repetitive. There's also a ton of achievements that would have required you to basically play the game a second time, walking around very slowly, finding very, very specific things hidden in the edges of the maps. This is one of those strategies where it's like at the end of the turn, for each one of these, if you have 30 shadows, you do 6 damage. So I've just absolutely lost. Like, this won't do anything. This won't do anything. Let's see.
I see to the ends of the world.
Yeah, this won't do anything either.
Of spellcraft.
Enough of this indulgence.
So I can do that. That's as much as I can do, and then I lose. So after playing Beyond Eyes, I played... I'm not sure this spell boost deck is not developed well enough to actually succeed. And this character doesn't seem to make too many noisy sound effects, on her own at least. which is to probably say that that none of the characters actually make too noisy of sound effects. Man. If you're not aware, there's apparently, from what I hear, a rumor of a major aluminum shortage, and it is pretty much impossible to find the lesser liked sodas in the stores, and there's a grapefruit based drink called Fresca, Fresca, that I was drinking every single day, and it was acting as basically a decongestant, for lack of a better term, which seems to be a major problem of mine. Every morning I just have like a lot of stuff in my throat, a lot of allergies, I imagine, and they don't sell Fresca anymore, and so I don't want to drink anything with a brown sugar in it, like Coca-Cola. And I don't want to drink, so I would get something like Sprite or 7-Up. But even Sprite and 7-Up don't seem to help, they seem to hurt. And water is neutral, in the sense that it does nothing. Doesn't help nor hurt. But, yeah, that's why I'm coughing so much. Anyways, to get back to where I was, I then started playing the Room 3, which is the third game in the Room series, which are cell phone puzzle games where you're typically in one room, and in the center of the room is a puzzle. I would say that the Room 3 does a fairly good job of breaking out of that mold, to the point where you're not just in a room, but it doesn't get incredibly far from it. If they were going to release a Room 4, I think at that point they should probably have just a full adventure open world type experience. Room 3 is sort of like that anyways. There is a central hub. In the central hub there are 4 or 5 rooms. In those rooms are things to do that have to be done to get then teleported to a secondary branched room, of which there's 4 or 5, and once you solve all of those pieces you get a key that brings you back to the central hub, and you then use the central hub as a location where you unlock more of the rooms. So there's like only one or 2 rooms unlocked by default, and then you get a key after doing the first room to unlock the 3rd room in the central hub. But where the Room 3 really took it nicely is that, unlike something like Myst, where the puzzles could be really cryptic and hard to understand or just obscure, all the puzzles were very simple. Almost every puzzle in the game I did immediately on the first try. They took probably less than 5 minutes in totality to solve. So it was a very nice experience. The only thing that it turned out there was a problem with it, and I only found this after I finished the recording, is that after you beat the game once, it tells you there's 3 other endings. To find the other endings, you have to do some extra secret things that are hidden in the overworld, and one of the extra secret overworld things, because it's fairly linear. What does this do? So
Bad people are evil. Stay away. They're picking on me. Not here.
let's see.
This evergreen sword will cut through their ranks.
Well, this could evolve for 0, but apparently it's not going to. I have to end the turn. Yeah. The puzzles are fairly linear. The overworld hub puzzles in particular are fairly linear. And it's slightly confusing because at a certain point there's a fortune teller when you're looking for the other endings that seems to indicate that you've done enough at a certain point to actually change your fortune. And you really haven't. You have to keep going until you've done enough to seemingly have solved everything. At least the way I played it does. But there's a specific yellow ball that's kind of ornate and looks like a sun or a sunflower. And it's on the rail of a high place, and there's a chandelier in the middle. And at the highest resolution of the graphics, it was just glitched. You were supposed to be able to, in the cell phone version, run your finger around it like a trackball, and it was supposed to, as you wiggled it back and forth, it was supposed to make the chandelier that was in front of you swing in different directions to the point where you eventually swing it to knock over a safe. But at the highest resolution, nothing I was doing was actually accomplishing anything. The chandelier was either swinging only a little bit or it was not swinging at all. So the fact that that was bugged meant I couldn't get any further in the story, which meant I couldn't get to the last two endings. And I finally looked it up and saw what I was supposed to do, and once I knew what I was supposed to do, I recognized where the bug was. It seems like there's a couple other bugs in the game. It doesn't feel like Fireproof Games is ambitious enough or just still good enough as a developer. Like, they've literally had probably 8 to 10 years of success, I would say, as far as a cell phone series and a cell phone game developer. And the only other game they ever even bothered to try and create was like a multiplayer game that's not worth even mentioning. And then they've made a Room prequel, which would be the 4th game in the series, that isn't on Steam. And then they made a VR game that is on Steam but requires VR, so you're limiting yourself even more than the limitations of being a cell phone game. Whereas I would have liked to see the PC versions have better graphics. I would have liked to see them have voice acting. There isn't a ton of dialogue that is written, so it would have been very easy in the Room 3 to have somebody reading those letters out.
May the forest be at peace.
But yeah, despite those little complaints, I actually had a very good time with the Room 3, and I would recommend, if you are going to play the Room series on PC, you should look at the price of all 3 of the games and hope to get it below $7.50, I would say. Like, if you're paying more than $10 for all 3 of those games, you're gonna be overpaying by a little bit. And then I would also after that point have it play them all in a row, even though the Room 2 kind of is slow, and from what I vaguely recall, it was kind of slow and kind of boring, and I feel like the Room 3 addressed a lot of those issues and moved the story in a further direction. There is definitely something around my love of Myst, because this feels like what you could have done with the Myst game if you had more simplistic puzzles and less just really big obscure puzzles. But at a certain point, I think I would like people to just straight up steal the parts of Myst that they probably would get sued if they stole. The idea of having different ages, the idea of books and linking books and world creation books. Like, I kind of feel like if you just don't go that far, you're never going to really satisfy that itch. And the good news is that the Myst Online Live, or which was Uru, then it became open sourced by the creators of Myst, have decided to add some new ages, which is kind of jaw-dropping, because I would have never really thought that they would have been able to get around to that. That being said, if having recently just played Uru, like, new ages might be great, or they might be kind of nothing. Particularly, like, the second part of the second DLC of Uru had very, very little puzzles, and it was just running around to specific places and finding floating orbs. Let's see. Could do 5 damage. Don't need to do 5 damage. But whatever. Get rid of this guy.
The truth was a bitter pill.
And I am full.
Help me, fairies.
Too many fairies in my hand. But yeah, I did like the Room 3 for what it was. I liked it very much. It was way better than the 3 previous games. I don't know why I'm specifically playing small games. I'm just probably trying to work myself into playing bigger games next, but I really should be playing something longer.
My dragon and I are one.
And I think I failed to mention that I played the little acre between Disoriented and Home is where one starts.
Let's go to the ends of the earth.
Just don't. Help me, fairies.
The power of nature.
Go ahead and take that out. But yeah, I really, fingers crossed on the new Cyan game that it does try to be very much like Myst without being the same story as Myst, because that's the part I think you've gotta abandon now, unless you just want to full on reboot it, which I wouldn't hate the idea if they got new actors to be Atris and the brothers and the daughter and the wife. Like, if they just got totally new actors to replace them, and it was like full hyper realistic 3D CG instead of full motion video this time, and they just were going to reboot it and tell a different story. You also then at a certain point could introduce an interesting idea like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where perhaps this actually isn't just a remake of the original game, but it's an alternate universe of the original game. Like, if they were to make a remake of Myst and you were on Myst Island and all the puzzles were different and the sons are just walking around with the father and nobody is trapped, or Atris is now like the bad guy, or there's a new bad guy, and the roles have been majorly reversed, that would be as interesting as the Final Fantasy VII Remake is. Perhaps you don't go with the idea of ghosts changing the specific events and drastically changing the things that happen in the game.
It's okay. I'm right beside you.
Perhaps you go with more of there's some kind of like black hole type objects floating around that have appeared and they're changing how all the puzzles work. I mean, that would be really cool. Because then that might represent somebody got a hold of the Myst book and is rewriting the book. They've gotten some new level of technology that allows them, or ancient writing technique that lets them rewrite reality. I should have probably evolved that one. That would have made a lot more sense.
Hey, let's play. Help me, fairies. Hey, let's play. Yeah.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Salvation Plan Spirit Evil, which is tagged as a third-person horror game. And it looks like there's something here, although I don't think this would be called a third-person game. This looks very much like a first-person game, and it does look very much like an empty world game. So this might be a Chinese walking simulator, or there might actually be a horror game here. Guess it doesn't matter because English is not supported. It's $15.29, Chinese only. But yeah, they should fix their tags at the very least. And definitely this is one of those games that definitely needs a user interface or some enemies or something to show that there actually is a game there. Alright. This. And then this. So I can then play this. Seriously? Well, I messed that up royally.
Hey, let's play. Let's play.
I screwed up there. So here's the tweet from Cyan. New ages in Myst Online Uru Live, or I don't even know what that actually is supposed to stand for. Could it be? Yes, join us in the historic unveiling, 1300 KI time, that's noon Pacific Daylight time. If you have to work at this hour, ask your boss for a vacation. So yeah, that's interesting to say the least. They're also still promoting the Myst documentary, which I'll watch the Mist documentary certainly if it comes out and if it's free, but I can't imagine that there's much new to be said there. Right. Fairy in your hand. Put this on the field. And then this damage. And then this.
Let's play.
And then this.
Let's play.
Do I want to attack that? No, because it'll just die at the end of the turn anyways. But see, the problem is he kills this, I can do 4 damage, and then possibly do 2 more damage, and then do 2 more damage based on the ability I have, if I succeed here. So he's got to figure out how to do 10 more damage on top of just directly attacking my face, and if he directly attacks my face, then I can do 7 damage and win the game. Potentially. OpenCritic has an article. Hitman 3 won't include Ghost multiplayer. They are also shutting down Ghost multiplayer eventually for Hitman 2. Which, you know, the Hitman reboot series is a weird series, frankly, as far as trying to consider can you go back and play it. Because I'm not sure that there is a way to go back and play Hitman 2 without missing a lot of stuff. This, and then this, and then that. Then in the turn. Yep. And that certainly will be a shame if I can just never get around to playing the new Hitman games, but yeah, I don't know what you really would have playing Hitman 1, the reboot of Hitman 1. Whether there's enough of a story there to have a good 5 to 10 hour experience, or if it is that whole experience was just so seasonal and so random that there actually isn't anything to do years later. And at a certain point then it just becomes a live service game, and I kind of were trying to get away from that, but I'm not sure they fully succeeded. Right. 1, 2. This guy has 13 cards, by the way. By the way, I also now know what happens when you run out of cards in this game. There is a Reaper card at the bottom of your deck that will have you lose immediately. So I can very much win this game if I just don't take 10 damage. That being said, there's really no reason for him not to just attack with these 4 characters and win, unless he's just not paying attention. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Since a Cyberpunk Ghost Story launches August 25th for PC, this fall for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Vita. Quite the cleavage on her. Let's see. What else can we tell? I'll look at this video and see what it is. I don't know if this is really a goal. a game or if this is just kind of a troll thing. It does seem like it is kind of a adventure game in a cyberpunk world, maybe with some ghosts elements. But yeah, I'm not sure there's really a game here. Or not. I'm surprised I survived that long. Okay. Well, let's do this. And then attack here, and attack here.
My lord.
And he left me with one in the turn. If I actually survive this, it's simply because he's interested in seeing what my last card is, or not interested in winning. Like, the chance here that he has something that would have him just draw a bunch of cards would be fairly low. And I have to just apologize if I'm end up playing a lot of Forestcraft. That's just really where we are at the moment. I need more cards. On Monday we'll do another pick 6, and we'll definitely try to stay around the open 6 concept of playing Forestcraft, and we'll try and get more cards for the other expansions so that I can think about rebuilding decks. Although I am also kind of checked out of building decks and playing this game. There's still a decent amount of single player story stuff that has to be done, but I think I'm going to be doing that at a slower pace now. Should I just play this, or it probably doesn't matter, just end your turn here. Techruptor has this article, and I think we probably already talked about this, but Epic Games' Apple lawsuit escalates as developer accounts are terminated. I'm not sure if any developer accounts have been terminated. Apple has notified Epic Games that it will be terminating all developer accounts on August 28th, which is 9 days from now, so there's actually still time.
May the forest be at peace.
And yeah, Epic is not. I listened. They talked about it on the Bombcast, and from their opinions and from my own personal opinions, it doesn't feel like they're really winning hearts and minds as much as they thought that they were going to get away with winning, undeservedly so.
Help me, fairies.
They very possibly are convincing a lot of little kids that play Fortnite, which may be the vast majority of their audience, that Apple is evil. But then they also failed to let it slide on Google phones also. So it's not like you've got clear messaging that all the kids with their parents' iPhones are going to now go and cry and tell their parents to buy an Apple phone in the middle of a pandemic. And I think a lot of people are probably undervaluing the fact that they did this right when school was supposed to be going back into session in the United States. That they kind of intentionally knew that they were going to lose a major player bases. And so I do think that this is in part a cover for a loss of a player base that they knew was coming. Let's see. Kind of doesn't benefit me.
Don't help me, fairies.
Let's see. But yeah, after these actions, Apple doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with Epic. I bet Google doesn't want to have anything to do with Epic either. The truth of the matter is, I think it was fairly obvious even at the beginning that Epic was not going to be a good business partner for Apple or Microsoft, or I mean Google, from the word go. And so it's not surprising, probably to too many people, that they ended up doing this.
The stars pale beside me,
That did not work as well as I had hoped.
Help me, fairies.
There we go.
Beg for mercy.
Doesn't matter.
So smart. Impressive. Looks like you won.
So, yeah, Epic really dropped the ball here. And definitely this goes to show, wow, usually it's a lot harder to get that 303 victories. We're actually doing well today. It makes Epic as a company look very bad, and Tim Sweeney personally look very bad. So if I was going to develop a game right now, would I use the Unreal Engine? Can I in my mind have this separation? Here you have a like singing character. Yeah, it would be kind of hard to make that argument. And it's not even the first time this has happened. There's the whole story of a few years ago of the Unreal Engine being into Human, and then there being a lawsuit against that, and there's like 2 or 3 stories where the companies trying to use the Unreal Engine got sued by Epic, or maybe they weren't even called Epic at the time, for either not paying the licenses, which at the time it felt like Epic was in the right at that point, but in retrospect it kind of feels like, oh, was there actually some really bad blood going on in the background, and did 2 Human get pulled from shelves rightfully, or did Epic just win a court case?
Even if I'm scrapped, I can still fight.
There was also like a X-Men game that got pulled from store shelves because of a lawsuit around the Unreal Engine, I believe, and I think there's probably been a bunch more little cases. So why would you want to do business with somebody that has such a high chance of suing the people you're in business with? They're coming in as potential bad faith actors. It really it really doesn't sound like a good idea. I would probably think very, very hard about making a game at the moment with the Unity engine, even knowing that the Unity engine is probably not as good. It also certainly explains why so many major publishers and developers have tried so hard to have their own in-house engines. Is like, maybe they all did that not just to save a buck, but because they were all having these terrible negotiations and these terrible interactions with Epic or Tim Sweeney directly. Yeah, it feels like, in retrospect, if you went back 10 or 15 years and took the problematic people out of being in charge of the Unreal Engine, we could very possibly have a much better set of games that have come out, and cheaper games, better games. Like, how many games were released with missing content because they spent so much of their budget trying to figure out how the Unreal Engine worked, or trying to license it or trying to fight in legal battles that were never talked about. I'm a little surprised also that there isn't an arbitration clause between the two, Apple and Epic. But apparently not. Apparently companies aren't forced into arbitration, just individuals, which is directly against the idea of equal protection under the law. But that's always been a joke, I suppose. Let's see. Alright, well, we want this going and this going,
No more corpses.
and then this,
Hey, let's play. Yeah. Oh.
and then that. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Flight Simulator 2020 is getting review bombed for its long download times. Apparently it is a really big game, and I imagine their servers are not very good. I also saw a story on Reddit that a guy in Chicago was sunbathing naked, and since a lot of the Flight Simulator game is just using the Google Maps type information where third-party companies fly around and film the entire world and put it into a database that they then sell to things like Google Maps. So at some point, probably several years ago, this guy was sunbathing naked on the roof of his house or apartment or whatever building, and that happened to be the time that the people flew over, and so now he is in the game. Pixelated. They do have technology to pixelate faces. Google Maps was forced to do that. And they definitely would want to pixelate any nudity they caught. But it does, in part, smack of a kind of lack of privacy. That you think you might have had that privacy and you really don't. That's why it's important to always have curtains. It's in most countries, in most places in the United States, and probably around the world, it's completely legal for somebody to put a camera on their property and have it point directly in your windows, and anything they can see through the windows is perfectly fine. At a certain point, a lot of case law that you can also walk around your house naked and with your curtains open, and if, say, a child walked by and looked in your window, that is still perfectly okay, as long as you're not basically intentionally enticing a child to look through your window, or doing like a striptease because you see that the child is looking in your windows. There'd probably be a better case against you then. But yeah, pictures of the roof of your house, not safe. Anything you do outside, not safe. If you go to a nude beach, somebody might take a picture of you, and you have to be aware of that and accepting of that if you're willing to engage in those activities. And you always need to think in the modern times that anything you do is going to potentially get on the internet and stay on the internet forever. This is a lesson I think we're going to have to teach to everybody, including kids, very much, particularly in this age that we are entering of deepfakes, where even just having a kid doing something very innocent and simplistic is enough to potentially have a deep fake made after them and have them then portrayed as doing something way more offensive. So yeah, I still heavily recommend kids put absolutely zero photos of themselves, zero audio like things. As a YouTuber who puts his voice on the internet and has put more than enough voice samples in which they could cut them together to have me say anything whatsoever. I recognize that I'm not practicing what I'm preaching here, but I would recommend kids not be allowed to do that until they're past the age of 18 or so, just in case. YouTube Creator Academy put out a blog starting an educational channel on YouTube. It's pretty much impossible to make an educational channel on YouTube succeed, in the sense that you would have to almost certainly market as, is this for kids? And in most cases that would be yes, and thus no monetization, thus no promotion. But in all fairness, there's practically no way to succeed as a new channel on YouTube anyways. You had to have gotten in on YouTube's content probably a decade ago plus. But they really also are kind of dropping the ball as far as putting out this blog, in the sense that if you were going to have like schools or interested parties, educators of some sort, make an educational channel, they needed to have been working on that footage like at the beginning of the pandemic, at the end of the school year last year, not where we are now, which is definitely too late to actually potentially have any footage to go. Yep. I feel like there's a high instance we're gonna see very quickly of just tech illiterate teachers who have been teaching out of the same book for 10-15 years. They never bothered to learn anything new. They didn't want to learn anything new. Teachers who are like, no, I'm just the king or queen of this kindergarten, and I don't have to follow any rules or learn anything new. I can just go 2 + 2 = 4 over and over again. And now that the situations has changed and they have to actually try and use even basic functions of a computer, they're like, no, I didn't have to do that before, and I don't want to learn anything new. Of course, this is a straw man story that I suspect will eventually prove to be a real story at the moment, but yeah, I bet you could easily find teachers that are still grading out of just pen and paper grade books, and they're having teachers' assistants type in everything into computers, and they don't even touch computers otherwise. And in all fairness, I bet we find that there is a decent amount of just incompetent IT people who ran IT networks for like small schools, lower grade schools, elementary schools, middle schools, things like that, where all they really had to do is make sure that the computers were running and that whatever little educational games they had were installed, and they didn't have to get into any high level networking or anything that would happen. I've heard an accusation that where some people are just trying to get out of doing any work whatsoever by claiming that their security protocols are are so high that they can't be connected to the internet at all. Like anything connected to the internet is unsecured, therefore nothing.
Do you hear the voices of the wind?
Therefore, nothing is allowed to be networked. So yeah. They all needed to take a lot more time, I think, too, and just delay the start of school completely so that they could have trained the teachers more. And yeah, they don't want to do that. And at a certain point, there is the idea that you might just be better off like centralizing a virtual education system, like, because in reality it would be like the idea of standardized education, and this has always been the problem with the idea of charter schools, is that everybody is supposed to get the same education, not that everybody's going to get perfect education. So from that perspective, if there was a federal Department of Education that was putting out just over the airways, broadcast on TV, and over the internet, broadcast on the internet, lessons that were being taught, and then there was, say, facilitators that were able to take questions and answer anything individually for individual students, you're probably going to have a similar experience to what's being done now. That's, to simplify it, what a teacher does is they mostly preach for 90% of the time to a classroom of 30 people, and then they get interrupted with questions by one or two students, or one or two questions amongst the 30 students.
You were utterly pathetic.
At least that's what they're supposed to do when they're not just acting as like draconian dictators, or dealing with students that are being disruptive. Which, yeah, there's something to that, certainly. But yeah, you could probably optimize that quite a bit and centralize it. And the idea of charter schools are the idea of trying something new, and I don't inherently hate the idea of trying something new, assuming that's what the charter school really is doing. Often I wouldn't be surprised if we found that a lot of charter schools are kind of just doing a private school type, stricter type of schooling, something that can just kick out the kids that are failing, or that are disruptive, or that have behavioral problems. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of charter schools that are publicly funded are still heavily emphasizing like Christianity in the United States, and pushing that mentality, or at the very least just heavily emphasizing a less open and less obvious way of teaching, so that they can get away with teaching differently. I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't teach as well. But what does any of that have to do with video games, though? How did I get on this rant? I don't know. I don't even know why I talked about that. That was a stupid rant. It was our YouTube rant that turned into a schooling rant. But certainly, I guess that's on a lot of people's minds.
Eradicate all demons.
But yeah, let's hurry up and wrap this up. We have Spiritfarer on Steam. This is a game we saw trailers for as an adventure game. Apparently has some co-op and seems to have some kind of different gameplay mechanics than what I thought it would be. They're saying it's a management game. Looks like kind of like a tiny tower on a boat game. Interesting. With some yeah. That's not really what I thought it was. But it is rated very positively. It does make it there. They're selling it for $29.99, which I think is probably too expensive. They've got a bundle with Jotun and Sundered that I think is also probably too expensive. The deluxe edition not necessary since it's just an art book. But I'll put this on the fall list. Has a bunch of language support but no audio. So that's something to keep in mind.
The forest abandoned me.
What does this do? There we go. We have another Paper Shakespeare game coming out on Steam. Although the other games that were based off of Shakespeare did not look this low effort. So it seems like this developer is getting even worse at making low effort games based on Shakespeare. $4.99 English only. Let's see if we can show some of the other ones we had. We had Furries and Scalies, Dinosaur Shakespeare, Furries and Scalies again, Dashing Dinosaurs. Yeah. I don't know why you would have this company on Steam. Like, you could probably use this whole follower system as a justification to just getting rid of a lot of people on Steam, frankly. Let's see. How do we want to do this?
Beg for mercy.
Bad people are evil. Stay away.
Just don't.
That, and then the turn. And in all fairness, I would kind of say that this developer is on the edge of something I might let on Steam, but I still probably would draw the line right past their games in the fact that they just put a ton of them out. Their oldest game is from 2016, and you've got like, how many games here? 20 games that have come out in 4 years. They all look incredibly low effort. They all look like joke games. If they're supposed to be troll games, I don't know what the real troll there is, but it definitely doesn't look quality.
The power of nature.
That was fun.
Let's see. Let's move on. come on. Pages. Gamma Sutra has an article. Take-Two Interactive acquires the mobile studio Playdots for $192 million. Okay. So, what Take-Two is planning to do in the mobile space, I guess, is slightly interesting.
Let us
Here we have a game called The Alau Trail,
by the wind.
which sounds Hawaiian. And yeah, it looks like it's a walking simulator of just actually walking a walking trail. $3.99 is probably too expensive for that. English only. And it seems like there's no VR support. Find and recycle the discarded water bottles to complete the trek. So it does have a little bit of a gameplay element also around it. One, two, three. I shouldn't have done that, but whatever. I could have. If I had played this, I would have done 2 damage to him and 1 in this turn. 2 more damage to him in 1. A game called Inmost is coming to Switch and PC August 21st. It's currently available for Apple Arcade. It looks like it's one of those dark style games where you probably walk around, a Limbo-esque game, maybe with some platforming and some puzzle solving. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of enemies you're fighting, or at least they're not emphasizing the enemies you're fighting. And that would be interesting to find out if Inmost actually does kind of just play
Let's go to the ends of the earth.
oops.
The power of nature.
Forgive me.
Let's play.
Your strength is formidable.
That did 2 damage to me. I thought it did 2 damage to him. Interesting.
You were utterly pathetic.
And again, apologies for just playing Forestcraft over and over again, but we're winning, so there's kind of no good argument around this. We should just grind up to try to get to at least C rank by the end of the month, if not maybe even B rank. I don't think we're gonna have as easy of a time getting to A rank and master rank on top of that, but maybe if you just put in enough effort and enough time, you'll get there. Yeah, I would be interested to see if Inmost has like a kind of slow reaction time or fewer enemies than you would expect because it's Apple Arcade. I have not heard that criticism for any of the Apple Arcade games or games designed specifically for Apple Arcade. But I could certainly see that being an issue. That has certainly been an issue with mobile games. The Room 3 is a great example of that, where it is totally a game with no real timing puzzles and a lot of touchscreen puzzles. Things that you wouldn't have, limitations you wouldn't have if you were playing with a controller or a mouse and keyboard.
The earth rains from above.
Trying to go through all the news and curate some things. I did curate some games that were named prologues because obviously those are just demos. It also occurred to me, and this isn't video game related, but Halloween is going to be a weird one this year. Like, I think the kids are probably going to get considerably less candy, if none at all, because they're not going to want to go door to door. They're not going to want to risk getting sick. And people are going to be broke, so people aren't going to be in the mood to really be giving away candy to random strangers. As another factor. And Halloween will probably be a leading indicator as far as Black Friday and the Christmas holiday season, as far as the joyfulness and the willing to give amount amongst people. Tech Raptor has an article here. Bear and Breakfast announced for PC and Nintendo Switch, which I have no idea what kind of game it is, but it seems like you're playing almost like a Yogi Bear type character. Well, no, it seems like you're building a bed and breakfast, maybe as a bear? I don't know, there might be a game here, or this might just be weirdness. It's going to be a timed exclusive, originally for the Switch. Alright, well, let's do this.
Hey, let's play.
And then do that.
But I walked the edge.
And then evolve here.
Me.
So smart.
And attack.
Not this tall.
Then in a turn. Suppose this game would be weird if you could just evolve 3 times in one turn. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article here. Card Shark lets you swindle 18th Central nobles in 2021. We're getting a lot of games that are being announced for 2021. This definitely looks more like an adventure game though than an actual poker game. And I guess that the question is, are these going to be like puzzles that you have to do to swindle the people, or are you going to be given several gameplay mechanics that let you swindle, and are you just going to then repeat those same gameplay mechanics over and over again? Because coming up with a new idea on how to swindle somebody is kind of unlikely to be something you could do. Alright. This. And then this.
Hey, let's play.
Beg for mercy.
This is the only way out of strange.
That. And then that. And then return. Next we have Rogue Legacy 2. It is out in early access. I definitely enjoyed Rogue Legacy 1. I've played Rogue Legacy 1 relatively recently, like in the past 5 years. So there might be an argument to putting this off until it's kind of like a finished product. Particularly if they're going to add more to it. They did add some things to Rogue Legacy 1 later on. I definitely felt like they should have probably not added things to Rogue Legacy 1 and moved on to making Rogue Legacy 2 a lot earlier. There is, I think, also going to be more of an emphasis of the down attack to bounce and do acrobatics, which that was probably the most difficult part of Rogue Legacy 1, so I feel like the game itself might be a little bit more difficult. But if it still has the rogue part in its name, it's English only at the moment, and it's selling for $15.99, which is also fairly high. It's a high price that they deservedly can demand considering their success. But yeah. I definitely have a feeling that there's that it would be another 60 to 100 hours of gameplay for me to actually beat Rogue Legacy 2 when it comes out officially. And in fairness, I think there is a argument that could be made that maybe that momentum has been that the momentum has been completely lost at this point, and there isn't a fan base there. It's possible that a lot of the momentum and fan base of Rogue Legacy 1 was the hype from the mainstream video game media. Definitely recall a lot of people at Giant Bomb talking about it for probably 6 weeks minimum, if not also giving it a Game of the Year award, and then or talking about it maybe for an entire year. And now, since the events of things like Gamergate and just the general awfulness of mainstream video game journalism becoming blatantly more apparent, there's less authority, hopefully. One would hope that people give less authority to the likes of even Giant Bomb or PC Gamer, IGN, things like that. Okay. I have 7 points. Interesting. And they conceded. I feel like that person just conceded because they had to go. And we're getting points, which should be giving us points towards a reward. A season reward. I wanted to mention this. Gamasutra had a sponsored link here that took you directly to this, a guide to Thailand's video game market, and it's just a full-on fill-out form. Completely different visual style than Gamasutra, and it's very much sponsored content. As far as how much video games are actually capable of being made in Thailand, I don't think there's a lot there. Thailand sells itself as a fairly pretty country, but I think it is also a fairly draconian country too. I don't think that they're just going to be. I think they're a little bit more conservative to Thailand's values, not conservative per se to like Western Christian values. So I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that can afford and own consoles. I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that can play games. I don't know how many games are allowed to be sold. It's also a fairly small market, relatively speaking, so I don't think you're going to put a lot of effort to publish something in Thailand. So yeah, this almost assuredly was a sponsored ad from a Thailand government agency trying to promote commerce, and good on them for trying, but in reality, I don't think I would spend one extra thought trying to sell a game to Thailand, even if I was an Asian developer. Like, it's way better to give thought about, hey, can we get this in Japan? Can we get this in China? Can we get this in Korea? Or maybe then you start thinking, can we get it into India? And by the time you're trying to get it to India, you're already translating it to English, probably enough that you would want to start thinking about getting it into the Western world. Yep. somewhat speaking of India, Gamatsu has an article here. Raji, an ancient epic for Switch, is now available. An ancient India set action adventure game. This one looked interesting. This probably was announced during that Nintendo Indie developer game. This was one that we have been kind of keeping an eye on for a while. It was just like questionable whether there really was a full game there or not with the original teaser trailer. Now, looking at the video, it seems like there is a decent amount of gameplay actually there. Which I'm happy for that. Like, I do, compared, like, kind of in direct contrast to what I just said about Thailand, I think that there is a high possibility, if India's government can get out of its own way, that and perhaps arguably India's culture can get a little bit more modernized and less less kind of backwards. Sorry, it's a insulting way to say it. There's a lot of backwards thinking people in the United States, and the United States has the same problem. But yeah, I think India has that problem too, where there's just a lot of people that are in things you would call cults, that believe things believe ancient beliefs and myths and customs from hundreds of years ago. But ignoring all of that, I do think that there is a possibility that India could become a modernized country that is capable and reasonable as far as a place to develop video games. They do have a fairly high number of technically inclined and well-educated people. And they have a small bit of inner security in the fact that they don't want to become a theocracy like Pakistan, or at least they didn't want to become a Muslim theocracy like Pakistan. So that will probably insulate them from having a draconian government that would like censor the video games, which is a big concern. On the other hand, India is going to be hindered by their government just being bloated and incompetent. So if they did put in some kind of legal requirements to publish games and like certifications, things like that, getting a license to publish video games could become a nightmare in India. Moving on, Komatsu has an article. Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero are coming to Switch in early 2021, which would give me a good excuse to play Subnautica. And there's already a fairly good excuse. Although, I might make an argument that I might prefer to play Raft before playing Subnautica, and try to have like a theme there where I play Raft and then I play Subnautica and then I play Subnautica Below Zero, and then there's 3 survival like item collection Minecraft type clone games in a row. But Raft is not a finished game, where I feel like Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero are. TechCraft has an article here. A game called Evergate has been announced for Switch. What is Evergate? It looks like it might be a platformer. Maybe a bit of a frustration platformer. I might be able to handle this. because it has a time slowdown mechanic. But even Ori and the Will of Wisps as a game that was kind of heavily focused around platforming, I found fairly uninteresting. So I would be cautiously optimistic about wanting to play something like that. 2 fairies. This can give things ward. I guess we evolved this here. That's kind of a waste, but whatever.
Oh, come on! Oh, come on!
Hades, according to TechRaptor, is coming to the Switch. Also, Hades version 1.0 is either coming out or soon out, so it has been like in the Epic Games Store in an unfinished early access version. In a funny way, I guess they had like the best negotiation there, because while they did have a level of exclusivity with the Epic Store, the level of exclusivity was for an unfurnished, well, at least what is being advertised as an unfinished version of a roguelike dungeon crawler, which does make it uninteresting, certainly, to a lot of people, because then you have 2 strikes against the game, one being that it's unfinished and the other being that it's an Epic Store exclusive. Here's Hades on Steam, and you can see it's overwhelmingly positive, but it's still labeled as early access, so they haven't apparently updated the Steam version yet. Yep. On the other hand, for something that came out nearly a year ago, there's, or not really a year ago, but in December 10th of 2019, there's a great argument to be made that it lost any relevancy it ever would have had. It definitely doesn't feel like it's the new Diablo game, or anything along that lines.
So vile you are.
Oh, you're strong.
So yeah, all I can do with Hades is just leave it on the follow list. Reached a score of 6,000. Notice that our score is 4,000, so that basically says we've lost 2,000 points in losses, and we've made 4,000s, which means we're winning 2 out of 3 games, which is not bad, really. Like, certainly we could do better, but we're not doing bad considering I've only been playing this game for maybe a month now. Next we have a game on Steam here called Zero Tolerance, which looks like it is a new game designed to look like an old game, or this is the publishing of an old game on Steam for the first time, and the date is just wrong. It's not something I recognize though as like a Doom clone with a maze-like aspect. And $9.59. You'd think, let's see, this was on the Sega Genesis. Okay, so it's an old Sega Genesis game. English, allegedly full audio. That's bull. You know that's bull. So yeah, I had a Nintendo, not a Sega, so that would explain why I don't recognize this. I bet this wasn't even recognizable to people who had Sega Genesis, or most people that had Sega Genesis. So Is there anything else to really say about that? I don't think so. No real reason to put it on the follow list. Like, I have no interest in going back and playing every single Sega Genesis game that ever existed. In the same way I have no interest in going back and playing every single Nintendo game that ever existed. We were getting decent win streaks, but we're not getting like 3 or 4 win streaks, which I'm not sure if that really would mean that you could get 400 or 500 extra points just by getting a 4 win streak in a row. Gamatsu has an article here. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe has been delayed to 2021, which I think there might be a good excuse for me to play the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, but I do kind of I don't look forward to the idea of potentially forcing myself to play through the content in the Stanley Parable that I've already played through once again. So if the Ultra Deluxe version is 3 more endings, but you have to then, if to get all the achievements, get the 6 other endings,
You were utterly pathetic.
that would be a little annoying. Now we had another concession. I wonder if just having a different leader confuses people so they don't know really what type of cards you're playing, and that's why they're conceding, or if we're just running into network trouble and it thinks they're conceding. I would not be upset with that, as long as they don't come back and say no, you cheated. I don't mind the game cheating for me. I feel like a lot of these collectible card games should probably cheat for you and have you play against bots that just concede automatically a lot so that you get a higher win ratio. TechRaptor has a review for the game Mortal Shell. We may have already covered this. I think we did. So we'll just scroll down and see that they gave it a 6.0. Yeah, this was the one that used the word rote, R-O-T-E. So we already talked about that, which means potentially everything after this point is duplicate tabs that I opened a second time. TechRaptor has a review for Fairy Tail. By all accounts, I don't think anybody really liked it. And honestly, I don't think Fairy Tail as an anime is quite strong enough to make people want to play an RPG on top of it. He gave it a 6.5, a fun dive into the world of Fiori, covering most arcs of after the time skip, enjoyable and interesting turn-based combat with plenty of side quests and collectibles to keep you invested through the story. Fans of the franchise should check out this game even if the combat seems like a turnoff. Pros are an enjoyable story, but it's missing the final arc, an interesting turn-based twist, but it's missing oomph, plenty of additional content and musical and character designs. So they gave it a 6.5, but it's a fairly high glowing 6.5 review they're giving it.
Let's play. Help me, fairies. Stay away.
Yeah. Of all the video game based properties, I don't think I would consider it reasonable to play Fairy Tail as... Seriously? This guy is never going away, is he? Nope. I've got to banish him. Or Yeah, I can't kill this guy. I've got to banish him. The IGDA decided to put out a statement on the violence and human rights in Belarus. It's not their job as the International Game Developers Association, frankly, to get into politics. I think this is the perfect example of keeping politics out of video games. Like, from what I'm seeing as a Westerner who's barely paying attention to the news, it does seem like there's some shady stuff going on in Belarus. Certainly, I'll throw them that bone, but I just don't see a point in sending out a statement when you're a unimportant organization that's not going to have any authority or any reason to raise their voice to this. You aren't raising an issue that people are unaware of by any means. So, so you should just stay in your lane and be focused around the idea of having more and more video games made and supporting the development of video games. Because that's what you're going to be good at if you're going to be good at anything.
I'm coming for you.
See, because think about the statement from the IGDA's, from the Belarusian perspective. Let's say that whether it's true or not, Belarus takes the hard stance that everything they're doing is perfectly right, and now they're mad at the IGDA and video games in general. Any video games that would have been sold in Belarus or developed in Belarus now may be in trouble. They may be disallowed. They may have their licenses pulled. So there's just a heavy layers of possibility there that something negative will happen to game developers based on your statement, with there being basically zero chance that anything positive is going to happen based on your statement. That's just how it's going to be.
Bad people are evil. Stay away.
Moving on, Gamasutra has a blog here. 20 years of mana, Secret of the Mana is enduring influence, which they use this thumbnail of a completely different game called Mutazion. And then there's like 3 pages here just so you click and see more ads if you don't have an ad blocker on. And in all fairness, I think the Secret of Mana is a major influence, although in all fairness, it's not. It should be called, what is the actual Japanese name? Seiku Detsen or something like that? Seiku Detsen Taizen or something? I'm just throwing out random Japanese words at this point. But yeah, it definitely was a heavily influential JRPG that heavily influenced the development of a lot of JRPGs and far fewer Western RPGs. If anything, you could make a decent argument that it was too influential, and JRPGs have struggled to iterate and do things differently because it's become almost traditional to have the same themes, the same ideas, the same concepts done over and over again. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Arcane Studios has delayed Deathloop to Q2 2021. This is the game where you are being hunted and you die and then you respawn in reality. The trailer looked like an interesting concept to like a Twilight Zone episode, but never really made a lot of sense as a game. So I'm still kind of holding my breath trying to see if there's a possibility that there is actually a game there, or if this is just kind of a multiplayer type experience that they're trying to sell as a single player game, or whether it's just like a really short experience or an interesting experience. We have a game on Steam here called Jelly Brawl Classic, which looks like a player versus player kind of low effort game for what it is. It's free though, so I guess the price is right. English full audio. Let's see. This.
Hey, let's play.
And then this.
Hey, let's play. Help
And
me,
then
fairies.
this.
Come on.
And this.
Ow. I'll be a great queen one day.
Yeah. In Deathloop you have this like sniper girl that seems to be one of the bosses, or the final boss, that hunts you down and kills you in every loop. And then you're playing as this other guy on who's being hunted.
Stay away.
Do that.
Someday I'll
Then do that.
dancing in circles.
Then do that.
Oh, come
That
on. Help me,
and that.
fairies. Come on.
I kind of like how Shadowverse now has kind of gotten down to the point where I know what I'm doing, so I can just go, yeah, this is the strategy. I guess that goes to show that it takes probably about a month to get to that point where I understand the game well enough that I'm like, yeah, I know this deck, I built this deck, I know the strategy well enough to know what I'm supposed to do. Moving on, TechRaptor has Pathmaker Kingmaker Definitive Edition is a near hit, which I don't know what near hit means. Is that to say it's a 7 out of 10, or is that to say this seems like this is one of those preview articles that they don't give a review to, which at a certain point I wonder if they're only not giving reviews to things just so that they don't review them badly.
Good to see you, my dear fairies.
Me.
I'm so smart. Yeah. Ow.
There we go. And it seems like we won't go a week without more allegations around some company for a while. New allegations, according to Gamma Sutra, show the cycle of abuse and misconduct runs deep. This was August 14th at Ubisoft. Yep. And I think we've talked about articles like this, and it really is just going to be a weird question about what does a cleaned up Ubisoft look like? Are there any employees left at that point, or is it just a complete clearing of the house and everybody has to go, or most people have to go, or all the management has to go? Is the actual talent pool compared to the management, which I would not consider really the talent pool? I think management is fairly disposable, going to be affected by these changes, assuming these changes even go the way people think they should go.
This ends here.
This guy is trying real hard to take me out, and I don't think they're gonna succeed.
Hey, let's play. I hope that we'll make it next time.
Beg for mercy.
I'm so smart. Yeah. Oh, come on.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Helheim Hassel, which seems to be some like comedy, dark comedy Viking puzzle platforming game by the looks of it. It kind of feels like it was originally designed for cell phones considering this interface, but that just might be the heads-up display. They did something where they could do a massive amount of damage to me. It's getting a little questionable. Are we going to make it to D4 or C0, whatever it is? Helheim Hassel looks interesting enough to put on the follow list. They're selling it for $15.99, which again feels a little too expensive. It feels like games in general right now are trying to price themselves fairly high. English full audio. And I guess now probably would be the time to sneak in and have a higher priced indie game come out when there's less competition amongst the AAA games, because all the AAA games are either waiting to be released on the next series of consoles, or they are just being delayed to try and avoid economic problems, which every day we're getting more and more evidence that the stock market has no relation whatsoever to the actual economy in the United States, because the stock market is doing better and better. And it really goes to show that politicians need to be called to task and told, hey, no, you can't just point to the stock market and say the economy is good. That should not be even a real consideration when over half of United States citizens have absolutely nothing in the stock market, and the only reason why a lot of people who even do have something in the stock market is because the 401ks and retirement plans are based on the stock market, when they shouldn't be. They should be instead based on either direct government bonds, or 401k retirement programs should just be funding towards Social Security that is guaranteed to everyone. Which Social Security is not guaranteed to everyone. And plenty of people that become disabled have a long, hard fight with Social Security disability, the subset of Social Security, to actually qualify, because it's a system designed to reject people. And on the bigger point, if I can get into crazy economics, I would argue that we shouldn't allow companies to be invested in at all. Like, I think we should have that limiting factor of businesses should only be allowed to be as big as they can be without getting money from outside influencers. That would have stopped so many monopolies and duopolies. You wouldn't have giant companies like AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile and things like that if it weren't for the fact that investors were funding them. And then if those companies also didn't have investors, they no longer have so much incentive. They still probably have some incentive, but not so much to try and make every single bit of profit in the planet. Which causes them to act unethically. Yeah. So just having reasonable ideas, like there should be a maximum size, or just a natural limiting factor of a maximum size at which a company can grow. There should be a maximum amount of money that a company can make before they either are just paying back all of that money to the employees, or they're paying it to taxes. That there should just be reasonable limitations on on management compensation and CEO compensation, so that you don't have situations where the CEOs of companies are making billions of dollars and the lowest paid employees are barely making minimum wage.
Beg for mercy.
I honestly think, arbitrarily speaking, you could probably limit the number of tiers of management to 5 or 6 steps. So the lowest employee has basically 5 or 6 bosses directly above them, and each of those bosses should probably get somewhere around 10% maximum more than the employee below them. Even if it was double more than what they had, that still probably would be less than the actual situation we have at the moment. Because if you really think about it, think about your boss if you happen to have a boss, and ask yourself, does that person, your boss, work 10% more than you? Do they deserve to be paid 10% more than you? Or have they been educated in some secret technology or logic that makes them 10% smarter than you? Or do they deal with 10% more actual work? Or are they just sitting around and taking meetings and wasting time and twiddling their thumbs? Because every manager I've ever had was maybe working more hours but accomplishing a lot less. A lot of bosses I've had weren't even working more hours and were actually doing considerably less work than I was.
Beautiful, clever baby.
So, of course, 10% is just an arbitrary number. It would be a percentage to think about. You could make the same argument for like 50% or 200%. I wouldn't go any higher than 200%. I don't think anybody would argue their boss does twice as much work or works twice as many hours or works twice as hard as you do. And if you are in that situation, you're extremely lucky.
It won't be long now.
Gone.
But if you had a limiting factor where just government-wise said bosses can only be paid twice as much as their employees, then that inherently would mean they would have to hire more employees anyways, just to try and balance that idea out.
I'm not one for pranks.
And they would have the bosses work less, in theory,
So vile you are.
and to try and balance that out also. Because then you would have to hire more associate level employees and more managers to cover the same amount of work. Or at least in theory that might be how it would work out.
Checkmate.
So sparkly. Yeah.
Hit that. And then hit that.
Let's play. Yeah.
And that. And that. Moving on, we have a Komatsu article, Fallen Legion Revenants character trailer, which looks like a
Small fry.
weird RPG, if I was to guess. Kind of feels like a Castlevania type game in art style, although it feels more like it's maybe an RPG game. I don't feel like that's a very good trailer for it, frankly. But it's due out for the PS4 and Switch in 2021. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a lot here.
There's no one else I'd rather lose to.
It's still moving too slow for most people.
You were utterly pathetic.
See. TechRaptor has an article here. Transformers Battlegrounds is just prime. We're almost done. So we have a Transformers game. It looks a little too cartoony for me, and it looks kind of generic. So I don't know how much of a game there really is here. Apparently this is just a demo. Yeah. It feels like this might be almost an XCOM style placement game, or just a very simplistic game with Transformers fighting each other.
Ugh, you stink of
And I'm not sure if that's really what you should do with Transformers, but it probably is what has succeeded with Transformers in the past, is just having fighting games. Where I would argue my vague understanding of the Transformers series is kind of more of a story challenge that they squeezed fighting into it, but it seems like every Transformer series I've seen tried to have a major story, compared to, say, like Power Rangers, where there was really no story. There was just a monster of the week, and of course they were all just designed to sell toys. And I guess at the end they are just robot toys, so fighting does need to be some emphasis. Although, again, in a video game world, perhaps you do focus on a story more. Of course, it would be very boring, I imagine, to most Transformer fans if they came out with something that was along the lines of a visual novel.
Hey, let's play. Help me, fairy.
TechRaptor has an article here. Terra publisher In Mass Entertainment is closing down, which I guess means the MMO Terra will possibly close down, and the anime RPG Closers might also be shut down in these territories. Apparently it's just the, now that I read this, it is the North American and European publisher, so I wouldn't be surprised if actually it stays as a publisher. Those games stay up just by their original publishers. It doesn't really affect me any of this news though, because I wouldn't play MMOs anyways, and I wasn't playing those MMOs. A 3D adventure puzzle platformer called Onirike launches for the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch in Q1. I assume that's how you pronounce that. Onirike.
My blade is your salvation.
Praise contradiction.
It sounds like a Japanese name, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a made-up name. This doesn't strike me as a particularly Japanese game. If anything, it looks like a weird French Art Nouveau game. It looks like it's probably just a adventure platformer. It's from the developer of Path to Monomacine, which I couldn't tell you off the back of my hand what that game was like.
My dear fairies.
Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Zodia Kalik, which looks like it is a Stardew Valley game
Going home now.
or an RPG game, but it looks a little too boxy. It's an RPG adventure, I guess. It's $4.49. It's English only. Apparently has 40 new songs and an enemies don't die system, which they're selling as a good thing. This doesn't look like an RPG Maker game, although it might be with the new RPG Maker systems. But it also doesn't look particularly interesting. So, I think they're failing on that part.
Leave this to me, fairy friends. I'll take care of them.
You must make amends. Heaven rebukes you.
What is this? Heavenly Aegis. This one just can't be killed.
Must retreat.
Like, this card literally can't be killed. Let's summon that. Destroy an enemy follower. Alright, so this might work. Nope. Because it can't be affected by spells.
Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
Yeah. Yeah, you pretty much have lost once this card is played. Next we have a game on Steam called Missing Time, which is just a romance visual novel game, also tagged horror. It seems to be fairly lewd, considering it's not tagged with any adult content. $19.99. English only, 175,000 plus awards, 15 to 25 hours, 110 backgrounds, and 25 character graphics, I guess, or whatever. I don't even know what CGs actually means. 4 character routes and 1 8+ endings, 1 secret route. Well, it doesn't look badly animated, so I'll put it on the follow list. Of course, there's certainly YouTube family friendliness questions that will come into play. This,
May the forest be at peace.
and then that's 3. And then fill that.
Pranks.
And then evolve this. Do that.
Deeds.
It's had a clash ability, didn't it? Darn it. Yeah, and the chance of me winning here is extremely low. We have a GameIndustry.biz article here, which I'm not following them directly. Sega will aggressively focus on PC ports after Steam's strengths during the lockdown. Strong sales during Persona 4's Golden Port will lead to more Sega catalog titles on the PC. Apparently they were extremely surprised by the amount of sales they got. So, like, this is kind of like the perfect example of the Japanese stupidity and traditionalism that they have. They literally just don't know the market and think they do. And so as such, they are just kind of constantly doing things the way they think things should be done, even though there are better ways. There are obvious better ways. If Sega heavily goes into the PC gaming field, that probably will push a lot of other people to go into the PC gaming field from Japan, as far as Japanese companies. Of course, the thing that still is the question is how much of the Japanese way of thinking of copyright and trying to apply Japanese terrible copyright system to the rest of the world will hinder PC gaming, as streamers are going to probably constantly get content ID and copyright claims trying to cover Sega games, and then that will potentially turn gaming sentiment against Japanese games, because A, nobody's going to cover any of them or play them, which is already the problem, and B, even if somebody does try and cover and play the Japanese games, if they get copyright claimed or content ID claimed, then that streamer is just going to be mad at them, and somewhat rightfully so. So they're going to have to let go of that idea, particularly since I imagine Sega is not going to be very quickly moving towards day and date releases of new games on PC. They're going to release very old games that they are looking for secondary boosts in income from.
There's no one else I'd rather lose to.
Alright, well, there's a free victory.
You were utterly pathetic.
And if I can get a win streak, seems like we could get over. Actually, I have a lot of tabs left. Go 5 Jigen game Neptune Reverse has been announced for the PlayStation 5. Whatever that game is. This is one of those Japanese announcements. It's like, we're just going to announce something. Well, I can see in the background they have some wall scrolls for like the Neptunia games, so this must be the same publisher. But all they did was mention the name. This, I guess, is going to be the Japanese name for the latest entry in the Neptunia series. So it is a Neptunia game. I imagine if it gets translated to English, which most of those games do, it'll get a slightly different name. For smartphones, Idola Phantasy Star Saga pre-registration is now available in the West. This feels like this is a spin-off game of the Phantasy Star MOBA. I'm not sure if that's exactly the case, but feels like that's the case. And yeah, I'm not sure I believe in the idea of a Phantasy Star or a MOBA in general being playable on a cell phone. I don't think we're quite yet to that point. Although, in all fairness, a lot of free-to-play games are fairly similar to MOBAs. Here we have a game on Steam called Grandfather Island, which seems to be a pretty like low polygon CG forest that you're walking around. I'm not sure if it's just a walking simulator. It says it has puzzles according to the tags. It's $8.99 French full audio. You don't see that very often. English subtitled. $8.99 is the price. I'll put it on the follow list and we'll see what happens. See what people have to say about it.
I've got to take a break, fairies.
Let's see. Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores, which Fight Crab got 29 out of 40. Giraffe and Anika got 29 out of 40. I was hoping that was a little bit better. Legend of Heroes Hajimari no Kisikai got 33 out of 40. That's a fairly decent score. MotoGP 20 got 32 out of 40. Rock of Ages 3 got 29 out of 40. Solaris Console Edition got 30. Terminator Resistance got 30. They Are Billions got 30. And Yokai Watch Jam Yokai Academy Y Wawa Goken Saikatsu got 35 out of 40. So clearly the game to play this week is Yokai Watch Jam. So yeah, the Yokai Watch series should be more popular around around the world, and I think they're just kind of dropping the ball as far as having it translate to other people. It is effectively a Pokemon spin-off, or not spin-off of Pokemon, but a Pokemon style game. Game of Sutra has an article here. The EA Play subscription service arrives on Steam this month, which I don't know why you would really pay for EA Play. I guess now if you were playing for it, you would have the extra element of now not needing to use EA Origin, but it's kind of like getting the free games with Xbox Gold without really needing to play for Xbox Live Gold to play multiplayer. And in all fairness, if I did have an Xbox right now and I wasn't playing anything multiplayer ever, and I probably wouldn't choose to have Xbox Live Gold just to get the free games, because I just don't really play games that way. I don't just let somebody else dictate to me, this is the game you should be playing at this point. Let's go ahead and attack this middle guy. TechRaptor has an article. Minecraft Jurassic World lets you manage a dino theme park. This must be some DLC for the Bedrock edition. Which they definitely are trying to change Minecraft from being this open platform system into the Bedrock edition, which is a closed system where you have to pay for DLC. And yeah, I don't think I want any part of that, frankly. 5 damage. Okay. I could attack this guy, but I don't want to attack. So I'm gonna end here. And hopefully he won't know what this card does, and he'll play a creature first. Nope. Because that guy would have done 10 damage to that had he been on the field. Game of Sutra has an article here. Microsoft has unveiled a new look at the Xbox Series X dashboard. Yeah, I think we already kind of had seen this, but yeah. They're changing things. And I don't know if there ever is going to be like a way to improve the interface. There's not, I don't think, going to ever be a major breakthrough. It's just going to be little iterations and trying not to break familiarity with people who have already become familiar with the way the Xbox Live dashboard works. You don't want to confuse people, and you also don't want to have you don't want to leave it so it's stagnant or have something that really is inefficient. And you can kind of just always make tweaks and always make changes on an UI. Yeah, and eventually you just end up with something like Windows 10, which nobody likes.
Ready to witness my true strength?
This next game is tag nudity, so let me double check all the screenshots. Nothing unfamily friendly. We have a game here on Steam called First Snow. It looks like it's probably a Western, maybe Russian, Yuri, girl-on-girl romance visual novel. It's free to play, so I guess the price is right. I say that every time. It has 10 achievements. It's English only. But see, I don't know what you get from something like this, because then you have this developer just put out a free-to-play game that has no in-app purchases, and unless this is supposed to be a demo for Without a Voice, which is also free-to-play, it seems like they are pretty much, this publisher is just consistently putting out publishing free-to-play visual novels, which probably are fairly short. That all being said, this doesn't look terrible graphically. Like this, 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 and this, then ball. And I've lost anyways. I would have lost even if I hadn't played fast enough. Next we have a game on Steam called Mushroom Picker Simulator. I don't think you would want to simulate the actions of mushroom picking, and I don't think you would want to trust a video game to tell you the right information as far as identifying mushrooms, which can be very dangerous. This is a $3.59 game, which is English and Russian. There is a danger here that this is a Russian troll game designed to encourage people to eat poisonous mushrooms, which honestly most Americans would not be even in a region where they can go to a forest and find a poisonous mushroom if they tried, or find any mushrooms. Gamma Sutra has an article here. X-Riot devs launch a multiplayer game studio called Odyssey Interactive in Canada, which I probably won't be interested in a multiplayer only company, so that puts me in a weird position as far as being interested. Open Critic has an article here. The Mass Effect Remastered Trilogy is coming in October according to an insider, which, yeah, I don't know how you could ever justify playing Mass Effect. Like, you basically would have to speedrun it. You'd basically have to try to avoid all conflict, avoid all shooting, and just have a visual novel style experience, and it still probably would take close to 100 hours. And yeah, I just don't know how you could have an experience there, or how you could justify that time usage. And that's as somebody who only played a little bit of like the first Mass Effect and then got bored. So almost certainly that would be my experience if I tried to go back and play the remastered, is I would just play it a little bit and get bored and then move on.
The forest abandoned me.
TechRaptor has an article. Final Fantasy 15 player housing is getting expanded. 15 is the online game. So I'm shocked anybody ever played Final Fantasy 15, and I'm, I guess, continuously shocked that people are still playing Final Fantasy 15.
Just don't.
Unbelievable!
We already talked about this, but if the page will load up, I'll point it out again.
Done for.
Game of Sutra has the article, Hitman's 2 multiplayer assassination race ghost mode is going dark after 2 years. Which makes it, like, questionable how much content really is playable still in Hitman 2. Or particularly even Hitman 1. That.
Let's play.
That.
Let's play.
And that.
Let's play.
And then
Just
attack there.
Unbelievable.
TechRaptor has an article, Stronghold's Warlords release date has been delayed to 2021. I don't think anybody was holding their breath for this game, but that's something. And they're adding more ads.
It won't be long now.
So pick this remixed ad.
Better than in the cradle.
Guess you have to do it twice. Pick that. Get rid of ads whenever we can. Here's another ad we can get rid of. Must have changed their site a little bit. Yeah, they did, didn't they? There's a lot of ads. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Wasting everybody's time doing this on screen.
Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
Come on, hurry. Hit that.
So spark. Yeah.
And then hit that.
No.
And then play that. And then end the turn.
Play.
Moving too slow.
Filthy little. Filthy little.
They're doing like 2 damage to me every time a they do something.
Filthy little.
So they're just gonna play cards over and over again and take me out. See, this is how you do it. I wish I had these cards so I could just play a ton of like spell boosted cards. Like he just took me down in one turn. I suppose this is somewhat video game related. Oculus is planning to replace the Oculus accounts with Facebook accounts. New people making new Oculus accounts have to use Facebook accounts. Eventually, old people with Oculus accounts are going to have to make Facebook accounts. I guess there's some assumption there that Instagram will probably do the same at some point in the future. Some undetermined point in the future also, since Facebook owns all of that. There is certainly something to be said about how a lot of the mainstream news people in general just have this ultra hate for Facebook, and yet they kind of had a big love for Twitter up until fairly recently, and they are now kind of hating Twitter in the fact that most well, not most, but a lot of mainstream journalists, not just video game journalists, but journalists in general, are at least outwardly presenting as flaming SJWs that are just going to constantly eat themselves, and it seems like they will never be happy until there is something like a Reset Era style forum that only allows one way of thinking and censors everything else, and any dissent or any even challenge or conversation gets censored. And even at that point, Reset Era will probably get canceled in the minds of many journalists.
Let's play. Help me, fairy. Stop.
Whereas I can't sing real praises for Facebook, but I can say that there is uses for Facebook, and just saying, well, we're never going to use it or we hate it is not realistic, and it's not a professional way to deal with things at all. Like, there's tons of people that arguably say the same thing over and over again, but they are at least having enthusiasm and talking about video games, who are on video game Facebook groups, and ignoring the real people and what the real people are talking about is not a way for someone to run their business or their news journalism business. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Carnage, which looks like it's just a asset flip car fighting game. It's free. Is it a student project? Honestly, even if it was a student project, I wouldn't want to play it. English full audio. So yeah, if you want to try out a free car battle game that probably doesn't have much going on for it. Let's see. It's an amulet we need to destroy.
Let's play. Hey, let's play.
I feel like the background music in Shadowverse here is playing quite a bit.
Help me, fairy.
I don't want to turn it down or anything, it's just I'm recognizing it, and it seems to be a little bit more in your face than I think it probably should be for just an average game. TechRaptor has an article. Marvel's Avengers Intel i9 Collector's Edition packaging doesn't include the game. Now, the Marvel's Adventure game I think is free to start type game, and this is a 10th gen i9, which you're talking $400 plus minimum.
You were done for.
So I don't know why you would specifically want this collector's edition for an overpriced, in my opinion, i9 processors. 10 cores, 20 threads, which honestly I don't think you should get off number cores. I think you should get 8 cores, 16 threads, or you should get 4 cores, 8 threads. I don't think anything beyond that makes sense. And the next level up would be 16 cores, 32 threads, and I don't know if any of those actually exist. Although maybe AMD's Ryzen's actually does have something like that at a very high end. I'm thinking about building a computer. So you have here 3.6 gigahertz basic with a 5.2 gigahertz boost. Whereas I'm not sure how AMD really handles boost at all. There is definitely still a lot of argument that the higher single core base speed might be way better for games, since most games are single threaded or mostly single threaded anyways, compared to just having more cores, which is what AMD is kind of selling on. It's an LG 1200 socket with an integrated Intel GPU, which they're just calling an iGPU. But yeah, that does not seem like a good deal, particularly for people who are interested in playing Marvel Avengers. Also, nobody in their right mind should be playing or planning on buying a new i9 CPU because of Marvel Avengers. That's just straight up insanity.
So vile you are.
Stop!
We're almost done. I said we were almost done a long time ago and I was wrong.
Godsworn wall. Unmoving shield.
Feels like we've been streaming really long, but it's really only been 2 hours and 40 minutes. Gamma Sutra has an article. Paradox and Hardsuit Labs fire 2 creative leads on Bloodlines 2. So that Masquerade Bloodlines 2 seems like it is having some development problems and background issues that
Good to see you, my
feel
dear
like they
fairies.
need to be dealt with.
Don't hurt me. So vile you are.
I've been beaten.
Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
See, is there any more to the story though? It says it's unclear if the 2 people that were dismissed, going by the names Clooney and Mitsoda, weird last names, were dismissed because of the game's delay or for other reasons. For his part, Mitsoda told Rock Paper Shotgun he was not part of the conversation that led to the decision that led production. He also denied the delay had anything to do with the narrative design team. So, yeah. It definitely makes it seem like it's a troubled development. Right. Just rush.
To the ends of the
Yeah.
earth.
And then play this.
Hey, let's play.
And
The
then
power of nature.
attack here. And then attack here. And then play this.
Hey, let's play.
And then do that.
You can't
And then
escape.
that.
Stop!
Gametto has an article. A Guatemalan retailer, so take this with a grain of salt, has listed Prince of Persia Remake for PS4 and Switch. Jason Schreier tweets, add fuel to the fire. The question, I guess, would be, is this the remake of the remake, or is this a remake of Prince of Persia Sands of Time 1, or is this a remake of the original Prince of Persia game from like the 70s and 80s?
You're done for.
This blade is our future.
Like, there's a lot of potential Prince of Persia games out there. There's at least 3 that go by that name.
Which fighter can go the distance?
Okay.
No.
1, 2,
No.
3, 4. There should be a remake or a new Prince of Persia game. But also, it's a Ubisoft title, so like, I'm not sure that they would ever do that, frankly. They certainly have pivoted Assassin's Creed so far from being the new Prince of Persia games that it would make sense to get back to the roots and just make a new Prince of Persia game. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. The Untitled Goose Game is receiving a 2-player update, which, okay, that's gonna be weird, but I imagine the people that were super happy with Untitled Goose Game will find that interesting. Although, again, I am not sure if average Joe player actually cared one bit about Untitled Goose Game, or if it was just a lot of people at Giant Bomb and the mainstream video game journalists who were obsessed with the game. This is the problem, is when I follow an average video game player on like a Facebook group or something, they tend not to really be talking about new games at all. They tend to be talking about the same old games over and over again.
She's not letting up. See you next round.
Let's see. Alright, how are we gonna do this?
Breeze will guide you.
5 damage.
I'm not one for pranks.
This fate is unjust.
Hey, let's play.
Stop.
Let's see, sorry, went quiet there. TechRaptor has an article here. Predator Hunting Grounds August update includes crossplay with friends. I didn't know that Predator Hunting Grounds was still a game that anybody was playing.
The real battle begins.
Yeah. I'm trying to actually win here because I'd like to end on a victory, and that got me going fairly quiet. Okay. All we need to do is this, this, this,
Play. Hey, let's play.
and then in the turn, and we'll win. TechRaptor has an article here. Crisis Remastered is coming to PS4 this Friday, so people can check that out. Oh man, I am 7 short. Man, I want to play one more game real badly. Let's see if we can get lucky and get a quick disconnect. But this is a mistake too, because we only have about 5 more tabs. Gamma Sutra has an article here. In 2018, women came forward about misconduct at Rocksteady and were ignored. So, yeah, Rocksteady is now also in the crosshairs. It seems like every company is going to be put through the ringer if and the number of accusations are probably going to be higher than you would expect, and the number of ignored accusations are probably going to be higher than you expect. I think that happens probably in everybody's businesses, whether you realize it or not. And I think there is probably a high number of false accusations that are conveniently being treated as though they are not false accusations. But it would be also fairly naive to say the world is not full of jerks and this kind of stuff isn't happening. But there also will probably be a heavy amount of just exaggeration in the accusations. Moving on, we have a game called Destroyopolis, which is a low polygon top-down twin stick shooter where you're just shooting things. It kind of feels like a modernization on the idea of Robotron, and there actually feels like there might be a game here. Now, I don't like these graphics, not one bit, but it looks like the trade-off of having the bad graphics is that you get more physics, and that does look like that might be something of an interest. So I'm going to put this on the fall list. $4.79, probably still a little expensive. They're promoting a different game called BEA Walker, which looks like it's playing as a AT-AT Walker. I think that's what they are called in Star Wars. Which, honestly, that's not a bad idea either. I could totally see people wanting to play as some of the lesser Star Wars vehicles and have a game around that. TechRaptor has an article here for Parkosaurus Rex, which is not the Minecraft dinosaur game. It's a different Zoo Tycoon type clone. And apparently at some point you have a first person mode and you can tranquilize dinosaurs in shooting from the first person mode. Let's see, they gave it a 6.5. It feels like TechRaptor's reviews are going to lower numbers, and I don't know if that is because the games are actually worse or they are just reevaluating their rating scale somewhat. It's probably a little bit of both. I imagine right now there is just a high number of slightly bad games getting released compared to the AAA games that normally would be released in rapid succession. They say Parkosaurus is a charming take on the dinosaur theme parks, but it has some small shortcomings that keep it from being a truly great experience. Pros are charming dinosaur design, tons of decorations and silly hats, and generous freedom to build your own park. Cons are the campaign rarely modifies gameplay, the map size can't be expanded, and the UI often gets in the way. Which, yeah, that does not strike me as a particularly well thought out experience.
Fairies, don't push. Help me, fairies.
This
I'm gonna rest
and
for a
this
bit.
and this
Hey, let's play. Yeah.
and that and that. TechRaptor has updated. Vampire the Masquerade 2 kicks out narrative designer Brian Mitsoda. Let's see what the update says. Let's see, they've given a statement to Rock Paper Shotgun. Quote, here we have a quote inside of a quote. Interesting. Well, at least they're using quotes. Like, I will take mistakenly double quoting any day. Actually, it's triple quoting. Quote, quote, and then quote. I'll take that any day versus what they usually do, which is not quoting anything. Let's play with this
The
first.
stars pale beside me.
Beg for mercy.
I'm so sparkly.
See how I'm trying to drag here and it's not working. Until recently I was the lead narrative developer, blah 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 blah. Almost 5 years involvement with the studio was suddenly terminated. This came as a shock to me, is underselling it. I worked blah 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 for almost 5 years. Blah 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 blah. I have never been led to believe that I hadn't succeeded. Very obviously, I've also been involved in PR and marketing sides of things, even though it was one of the most difficult parts for me. Blah 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 blah. See, so he's putting out pretty much the perfect statement here to go, oh, I don't know why they fired me. They did it. They blindsided me. They had no valid reason to fire me. Just sticking with that story, regardless of how true it is the exact right response. Because A, it does everything possible to keep anything that you may have done negatively secret, and there we go. We made it to rank C0, and on that victory, we will stop playing. But yeah, there's no reason to air dirty laundry. There's no reason to not make it seem as though the company themselves fired you arbitrarily and without reason, regardless of how true that is. So we got to score 6, which is 50 more vials, which is actually a considerably low amount of rewards. And then we got to rank level 60 in Forestcraft, which started over these 5 stars. Interesting. I didn't realize that. And then we got to 65, so we got some more animated basic cards. And then we got to rank D3, which gives us 100 rupees. We have a decent amount of that. And then we ranked C0, which gets us the Journeyman Flare. So we also are making progress towards winning 50 ranked matches as Forestcraft, and at some point we'll probably hit a point where we have to just play as something like Bloodcraft to try and get any more rewards, because we'll have all the other rewards done. There's still a decent amount of achievements here, but it kind of stops after a certain point. Like, I don't know if that certain point is actually a year from now or 6 months from now. I've also been very bad about trying to play the private matches. I've never haven't been able to find a great time. And I suspect the Code Geass crossover is going to end fairly quickly. So what I probably should do is use this Journeyman Flare. That way it might scare some people. But I don't even see where it is. Where's Journeyman? Well, I just got it, and yet I don't see it. That's weird. And we're up to 37 ranked wins here, and considerably nothing here. Let's finish the news and call it a day. Postal 4 No Regrets has added a new day, which is weird. I guess it's still in early access. Yeah. So they now have the Tuesday update. Yeah, I forgot that that was an early access game. That's still weird. That's real weird. I also forgot to see if I ever actually was accepted in that guild. Let's see. Apparently I was not accepted, and I was just automatically rejected. Should just join instantly a guild and see what it is. You've already sent a join request. The user you've recruited is already a pending join request. Yeah, we have this one we should cancel. Cancel. Geez, which one should I cancel? Like, that's some bad development. Casual players join. They join the guild. In a guild you can chat, share decks, replays, and play private matches with guild members. You can access guild settings and member management on the left side of the screen. Some features such as member recruitment are only accessible by guild masters and elders. You can share objectives and schedules on the guild message board. Messages can only be updated by guild messengers. So here you have, yeah, a lot of people. You can share decks and you can do stickers. How many stickers are there? Interesting. Well, I don't know where these stickers come from, but they seem to exist. And I guess I could friend request people. But that seems like that's the entirety of what the guild is. It's just an extra feature that doesn't do anything. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Loving Evil, which looks like a visual novel demon dating romance simulator, which we've seen quite a few more of these than you would think. $11.69 English only. I'll put it on the follow list. We'll see if people like it or if they actually want to play it. Like a lot of times, these games are not really worth mentioning. TechRaptor has an article here. Final Fantasy XIV Online is now collaborating with Yokai Watch, which this looks very Hawaiian and giant shark. Yokai Watch is very cartoony in its animation style, so I don't know how you do a collaboration around Yokai Watch and Final Fantasy without drastically changing the way the Yokai Watch characters look. And I'm looking through this trailer and I don't really see anything here that yeah, I don't see anything here that actually seems like it would be Yokai Watch related. It's yokai themed minions, weapons, and a mount, but seemingly all in the Final Fantasy XIV style. So you'd have to be a fairly large Final Fantasy XIV fan, or a huge Yokai Watch fan to want to play those two. Let's see, and that brings me to the Humble Bundle store. The Fantasy 3D printable models, a Judge Dredd comics bundle, the Humble Choice bundle, 14 days until the Killing Floor game bundle ends, and seemingly that's gonna be the only time we get a new game bundle. And yeah, we are definitely at a point where the game bundles are becoming less and less useful for me. And so that brings me back to my Twitter feed to see they have a Battletoads review from TechRaptor. We'll talk about that on Friday. A short story game called Rainy Season for PC is now available. I would do very nicely if I could win a free computer or computer components, but odds are low that that would happen. Even though I would love that to happen. Fall Guys is getting competitive on Twitch Rivals, whatever that means. And by the looks of it, that may literally be all the new news, yeah. Unless Twitter is messed up and I would have to go all the way down to the point to force it to reload to see something new. It seems like in the course of 3 hours streaming, we've had on my Twitter feed 3 relevant tweets, which very well might be the case. Things are slow. Like, things are totally slow nowadays, and it gets a little boring, even as somebody who just plays video games and acts as a video game critic all day and doesn't have to really interact with too many people on a daily basis, and often is only choosing to interact with people and really could get away with potentially talking to less than 3 people every single day if he wanted to. Like, even at that level of just social isolation, there is a feeling you get in general when you turn on the TV and nothing new is being said, nothing new is being talked about, or when you go on to Twitter or Reddit or even YouTube, even the YouTube content creators that I follow, are becoming fewer and fewer as far as the amount of content they make, which I guess now might be the time to start putting a lot more content on my channel, if I could just flip a switch and do that, which I can't. I suppose it's worth mentioning that the creator of Hexcell series has updated their games to have a new puzzle generator. So if you like the Hexcell single screen puzzle games, which they're fine, they're fine games, you might have a better reason now to go back and do the dailies on them. But yeah, in a weird way, the whole world is depressed in the sense that it's just acting slower and accomplishing less, and it's not as ambitious as it once was. Just everything is kind of slowing down, and I'm not sure that current generations that exist can actually tolerate a slow lifestyle. Yeah, I just scrolled all the way down to the bottom of Twitter and it still didn't have anything new to show me. Yeah, I'm not sure people can really handle a laid-back, slow lifestyle so easily. The transition would be rough, is the main thing. I think people probably could figure it out eventually. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching.